Hey you guys! Most photographers spend way too much time worrying about their Instagram and not nearly enough time on the one thing that actually books them clients, their website. And I really believe that's the wrong thing to be concentrating on because your website is your sales machine. It's where people go when they are actively searching on Google for a photographer near them. And those people, the ones who are searching and doing their research, tend to be much better clients because they're not just scrolling, they're actively looking for a photographer who fits what they need. So it's really important to put time and energy into your website. But what I see happen all the time is that our websites become an afterthought. We're busy shooting, editing, posting on social media, and the website kind of just sits there. Maybe you haven't updated it in a while, maybe you're thinking about redoing it, or maybe you're creating your website for the very first time. Wherever you are, this video is going to help because today we're talking about the number one mistake I see when I'm doing photography website reviews and critiques, and that is not thinking about how to truly connect with the client you actually want to photograph. If you're not doing this, you are leaving money on the table. Because if your website starts to feel like an echo chamber of other photography websites, and it doesn't clearly show who you are and how you're different, you're either going to attract the wrong clients or you're not going to connect at all. Because when you try to speak to everyone, you end up speaking to no one. If you're not considering the emotional journey someone goes on when they land on your website, then you're missing out on bookings. Because the job of your website is to take someone from thinking to feeling. When someone first lands on your site, they're in that analytical mode. They're asking questions like, is this the right photographer? Do I like their work? Can I trust them? Is this worth the investment? And your job is to gently guide them out of that space and into a feeling. Because that feeling, that connection, is what makes someone actually reach out and inquire. So, how do we do that? Let's walk through a typical photography website with the goal of moving someone from thinking to feeling. Because chances are, by the time they land on your website, they've already looked at a handful of other photographer websites. And at a certain point, everything kind of starts to blend together. Same type of photos, same kind of wording, same general feel. So your job, right from the very first page, is to create connection. And we need to do this quickly, like in a matter of seconds. And this is mostly done through your images. Your home page isn't about showing everything. It's about showing the right things. And it's really important that the images on your website clearly define who you are as a photographer. A couple of weeks ago, I created a video about defining your photography style in 3 words, and I'll link that here if you want to go back and watch it. But those 3 words, they should be very obvious in the images you're showing on your homepage. But let's go a little further, beyond just those 3 words that guide your images. The photos on your homepage should also be memorable. They should make someone pause for just a second longer. Maybe it's a photo with really genuine emotion. Maybe it's beautiful scroll-stopping light. Maybe it's a more atmospheric image, or something taken from a slightly unexpected angle. Whatever it is, it should make someone feel something, because the goal here is not quantity, it's quality. You don't need to show everything you've ever shot. You need to show a small, intentional set of images that clearly say, this is who I am as a photographer. And at the same time, make someone feel connected enough to want to keep going. Because the goal of the homepage is to create curiosity and make them want to move on to your About page. That next click is really important because it means that they felt something, they're curious, and they want to see more. So in addition to the images that make your potential clients feel something, we also want to create a bit of a cliffhanger feeling on this page. Kind of like When you're reading a really good book at night and you tell yourself, I'm just gonna read until the end of this chapter, but then the chapter ends on a cliffhanger and you think, okay, just one more page. That's the exact feeling you want to create on your website. You want them thinking, I just want to see a little more. One simple example of this on my homepage is I have a clear, prominent button that links to my portfolio page about midway through my homepage. Next to it, it says, Happiness This Way, with an arrow pointing to the button. There's even a little bit of subtle movement. It feels a little bit playful, and that small detail helps draw people in. It invites them into the experience and makes them want more. So when they click on the next page, we want to deepen the connection that you started building on your home page. The About page is where so many photographers unintentionally lose that connection they've started to build. Here's what I want you to keep in mind anytime you're writing about yourself. You still need to be thinking about your client. Where are they in their journey? What are they thinking about right now? What matters to them in this season of life? Because what they're really asking, whether they realize it or not, is, can I connect with this person? You want them reading your About section and thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like we would get along so well. This is a place where you move someone from liking your work to feeling excited about working with you. And here's the ironic part. The About page is not actually all about you. It's about using pieces of your story as connection points so they can see themselves in the experience. A simple way to think about this is like you're out to coffee with a friend. And if someone just talks about themselves the entire time, you kind of walk away thinking, I didn't even really need to be there. There's no real connection built. But when someone shares about themselves while also bringing you into the conversation, that's different. That's when it feels natural, easy, and connected. That's exactly what we want your About section to do. So even when you're talking about yourself, you're weaving them into it. For example, instead of just sharing your story, you can talk about your why behind your photography, the connection you're always looking for in your work, the way you use light to highlight their moments and tell their story. You're constantly asking, where is my client's head right now? What feels important to them in this stage of life? What kind of experience are they hoping for? And then you bring that into your words. Another place this shows up a lot is in those little fun facts or bullet point lists. Most of the time we default to things like, I love coffee, or I love perfectly imperfect moments. And while those are true, they're also very generic. And when every photographer's list sounds the same, you start to blend in. So instead, think about where your client is emotionally and meet them there. For me, as a family photographer, I know my clients are in a busy season centered around their kids. So I might say, I adore children's books and the nostalgic, cozy feeling of cuddling up and reading together. I love being outside with my family and letting kids just be kids. I'm always watching how light changes the feeling of a moment. I love tea, mostly because no one else in my house does, so it's always mine. I love slow mornings, even though this season of life doesn't always allow for them. And I'll always notice the light before anything else, sometimes mid-conversation. So those are all little examples where I provide more details that feel more personal and more specific and more inviting. And what that does is it helps someone feel like they know you. And when someone feels like they know you, they're so much more likely to take that next step, moving on to the portfolio or service page. For the purpose of this video, I'll refer to it as the portfolio page, but just know that I'm talking about the page that holds the most detail and is designed to sell. This is like my favorite page in the whole website. Now, once someone clicks over to your portfolio page, this is where things really start to shift. This is where the research begins, but more importantly, this is where the connection either deepens or it falls off. Because at this point, They're still thinking, but they're also starting to feel. They're asking questions like, can I see myself in these photos? Would I feel comfortable with this person? Is this the kind of experience I want for my family? And your job on this page is to take that initial curiosity from your home page and the connection that you deepened on your About page and turn it into a real connection. So to do that, there are really 3 things we want to focus on this page. We want to help someone resonate with your work and your experience. We want to clearly differentiate what makes you unique. And we want to build trust so they feel confident reaching out. Because when you do those 3 things well, that's what moves someone from casually browsing to actually inquiring. And this first piece is really about helping someone feel like, yes, this is for me. The same way you clearly define your photography style in 3 words, you also need to define the experience you provide. Because your images might be what gets someone to click onto your portfolio page, but your experience is what ultimately makes them feel confident enough to reach out. So, here's an exercise that can really help with this. I want you to think about your photography business as if it were a person. If someone met your business in real life, how would they describe it? Then set a timer for 3 minutes and just start writing. Write down as many words as you can that describe that person/business. Words like playful, organized, empathetic, funny, calm, professional, colorful, adventurous, sensitive, whatever comes to mind. And don't overthink it. Just let it come out. And if you feel stuck at all, this is where it's really helpful to go back and look at your past client reviews. Because a lot of times your clients are already telling you exactly how they experience you. You just haven't pulled the words out yet. At the end of those 3 minutes, I want you to choose the 3 words that best describe your business. And then take it one step further and write down synonyms for each of those words. Because now what you're doing is creating language that you can naturally weave throughout your portfolio page. And I know this part can feel like a little repetitive, but if it feels repetitive to you, it's probably just starting to land with them. This is how you move from just showing photos to actually communicating an experience. And that's where the connection really starts to deepen. Now, the second piece, differentiating, is what keeps you from blending in. Because if your portfolio page looks and sounds like every other photography website out there, you're going to blend in without even realizing it. So this is a good moment to pause and ask yourself, what makes me different? And I don't mean something big or dramatic. Most photographers equate different with big, but it's not. It's usually small. And it's your job to make that small thing very clear. A differentiator doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be something that is true to you that you choose to emphasize. For example, something I lean into in my own business is light. I love shooting in all different types of light, and most photographers do. So it's not technically like this big differentiator, but not many photographers actually talk about it. So on my website, I talk about light a lot. I point it out, I describe it, and the photos I choose to show also reflect that. It's something I've decided to emphasize. So even though it's not necessarily like really unique, it becomes a differentiator because I make it one. And I've seen this with other photographers too. I was working with a student who includes video in every newborn session she does, which is amazing. That is a huge value add. But when I looked at her website, that detail was absolutely buried. It wasn't called out. So the thing that actually made her different wasn't helping her connect with clients at all. I've also worked with a photographer who only shoots on weekdays, not weekends. And she initially thought that was a disadvantage, like it might turn people away. But when she started to lean into it and clearly communicate it on her website, she actually started attracting clients who preferred weekdays. and it became a differentiator for her. So the takeaway here is this: your differentiator doesn't have to be big, it just has to be clear. And when you take something that's true about you and you highlight it, talk about it, and support it with your images, that's what helps you stand out in a way that actually connects. And this last piece, building trust, is what actually gets someone to take the next step. Because even if someone loves your work, if they don't feel confident in the experience, they won't reach out. Now, another really important piece of this page, one that people don't talk about enough, is your actual images. Every single photo you include on your portfolio page should make the person in the image look good. And that's part of that trust building that I was just talking about. And when I say look good, I mean like really good. Because you might love a photo for the light or the composition or the background, but if someone's expression is a little off or their eyes aren't fully open, that's what people notice first. And what happens is, even if they don't consciously realize it, they start to lose trust. Because now they're thinking, what if that's me? What if I'm the one who looks awkward in the photos? Most people don't love having their photo taken. I actually don't love having my photo taken, ironically. And that's something I think we forget sometimes as photographers, because we're so comfortable behind the camera. But for most of your clients, this is a vulnerable experience. They're thinking about how they look. They're worried about their kids behaving. They're wondering if they're going to feel awkward. So when they're scrolling through your portfolio, they're not just looking at your photos. They're imagining themselves in them. And that's why your job on this page is to show them very clearly and consistently, I've got you. You're going to look good. You're going to feel comfortable. And you're not just saying that with your words. You're showing it through your images, your expressions, your moments, and the way people look relaxed and natural in your photos. Because when someone sees that over and over again throughout your portfolio and your entire website really, it starts to build trust in a really quiet but powerful way. And honestly, that kind of trust builds faster than almost anything else you can do on your website. Now, once that trust starts to form, we can take it one step further. Another way to move someone from that analytical space into a deeper sense of connection is to include a section like, are we a good fit? And I love this section because it shifts the entire tone of the website. Instead of feeling like you're trying to convince someone to book you, it feels like you're inviting them into something. You're showing that you're not just focused on making a sale, you actually care about whether this is going to be a good experience for them. And that creates a sense of safety. It makes people feel like they can relax a little bit, like they don't have to figure everything out on their own. And when someone feels safe, they're much more open to connection. And that connection is what leads to inquiries. And then finally, this is where testimonials come in. You don't need a long list of them. You don't need to overwhelm people with 5 or 6 different reviews. What you really need is one strong, well-placed testimonial that supports everything else you're already saying on your website. And one of the best ways to choose that testimonial is to think about the common concerns your clients might have before booking. Maybe they're nervous about being in front of the camera. Maybe they're worried their kids won't behave or cooperate. Maybe they're unsure if it's worth the investment. Then find a testimonial that speaks directly to one of those concerns and place it intentionally on your portfolio page. Because now you're answering their question before they even have to ask them. And when you do all of this well, something really important happens. You move someone from analytical into connection. They came to your website with questions and uncertainty, and now they feel understood, supported, and confident in what you offer. And once someone reaches that point, the next question becomes really simple. Can I afford this? Not, is this worth it? Because you've already answered that. And that's why the next piece, pricing, becomes so important. Because now you're not trying to convince someone, you're simply helping them take the next step. Now, once someone reaches this point, They've moved from thinking into feeling. They feel connected to your work. They trust you. They can see themselves in the experience. And now they're asking a much simpler question. Can I afford this? Before we move on to the contact or inquiry page, there's one really important piece we need to talk about, and that's pricing. Because this is one of those common questions photographers have. Should I include pricing on my website? And my answer is yes. Because remember, people coming to your website are in that research phase. They are actively looking, comparing, and trying to figure out what feels like the right fit for them. And when you don't include pricing at all, it creates a little bit of friction. Now they have to reach out just to get basic information. And a lot of people won't do that. So including pricing actually saves time for you and for them. And more importantly, after all the work you've done up until this point, after you've created connection, built trust, and helped them feel something, they're much more open to seeing the investment. Because now it's not just numbers, now it feels worth it. And that's a really important shift. Now, if your pricing is more complex, you don't have to list every detail. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that because that can feel overwhelming. But you do want to give them some kind of anchor. Something simple like, most clients spend around X when working with me. That gives them context. It sets expectations and it helps them self-select before they ever reach out. So instead of attracting everyone, you're attracting the right people. This is where we move into your inquiry page. The biggest thing to remember here is this page should be simple. You don't need a long, complicated form. You don't need 10 questions. 3 to 5 questions is more than enough because at this point your website has already done the heavy lifting. You've already built connection. You've already answered questions. Now your job is just to make it easy for them to take the next step. One of the best ways to start your inquiry form is with a question like, what type of photography are you interested in today? And I love this question because it feels natural. It feels like walking into a store and someone asking, what can I help you find today? They're not immediately asking for your name or your email. They're starting with your need. And as a bonus, this also is really helpful for SEO because you're reinforcing the types of photography you offer. Then from there, you can collect the basic information you need, like the name and the email, and if you prefer, a few details about their session. But remember to keep it easy and to keep it approachable. Okay, then finally, this is the page where you want to add one more layer of trust. This is a great place to include any awards, certifications, or professional groups you're part of. Because at this point, they're right on the edge of reaching out, and this helps seal the deal. It gives you credibility. It quiets any last little bit of doubt they might have, and it reassures them that they're in good hands. And when you've done all of this well, you've taken someone all the way from curiosity to connection to confidence. And that's what turns a website into something that actually books clients. So if you take anything away from this video, I want it to be this. Your website isn't just a place to show your photos. It's a place to create connection. Because the goal of your website is to move someone from thinking to feeling. And when you take the time to guide someone through that emotional journey, from that first click to building trust, to helping them feel confident enough to reach out, that's when your website actually starts working for you. I would love to hear from you. What is the one thing on your website that you're realizing you could improve or change after watching this? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one and I'd love to hear what stood out to you. And if this video helped you think about your photography website in a new way, go ahead and like this video and subscribe because I have more coming that will help you build a photography business that not only books clients, but actually feels good to run. Okay, seriously, thank you so much for being here, you guys.